Who else has gone to that? I think that's it. Savannah and Mark out. It's more than 5 minutes. Yeah. All right. Do we get to this? So what? So we have a day they would hire women, and what was the name given to an interchangeable parts? The words were not coming out. Interchangeable parts. Interchangeable parts. What system did they call it? The American system. Who was the person who did the fate machine tools for muskets? Eli who? Eli Whitney. And what is the term? Machine tools. Those are the most valuable machines. But what's all the means of production? The machines, the building, the fuel, the land it's on. That's capital. And we got the factory system, textile mills. Oh, who memorized a textile mill? Yeah, Samuel Slater. And what kind of women? I'm sorry, not women. What was the system of textile production? The factory system. They'd hire women because they could. Lol. Yep. Wow. And how would they break the will of people so they would not resist? The school. It's not quite like that. And by the way, I told you about what schools are designed on purpose to make you workers. And they talk about this all the time when they talk about education. That you're going to be a good worker. That's all the time. They'll cast it in things like you'll get training or skills or something, but it's to teach you how to obey. Is that bad? Yeah. Is it good? When is it bad? Yeah. When everyone becomes the same. Hey, let's be quiet here. When everyone is exactly the same, and there's one more thing that comes out of this. If you don't know, you can be easily manipulated to do all kinds of things. Did you expect that about school? Yeah. And by the way, have you noticed how many weird rules there are in school? Yes. Guess what jobs are like? All kinds of weird stuff I have to do. Like, for example, why do you think you guys get out early? So we do stuff that really. No, I got to do stuff. You're gonna have to obey weird rules. And why? Because you just got to do it. In fact, now it just becomes like ingrained. It's not necessarily bad, but it has a chance to be very uniform. In special topics in American history, we talk about the Vietnam War and how schooling also kind of manipulates people to be kind of like for the war, more than not. Things are just kind of surprising. It has this uniforming factor that can be pretty bad. I told you, but that doesn't mean you can't do whatever you want. It doesn't make it bad. It works really well though, doesn't it? It is always amazing. We have 1,400 people and there's not a soul in the hallway. Kind of impressive, isn't it? You got to admit, that's impressive. So, this would also be the beginnings of labor unions. It'd be young women. Now, there were guilds and other things very much like labor unions, but it asked this basic question. Once you have this factory system, a regimented system, do workers have rights? Individual workers have no power, and so these young women, your age and younger, began to organize collectively. That's called collective bargaining. One worker alone, and the bigger the company gets, has no power put together. This is collective bargaining. And here are, I thought this was a very good picture. She was about 12. That was the norm. This also would lower wages, do all kinds of stuff, but the first labor unions would be here. No country had a more volatile, violent labor history in the United States. And how do companies feel about labor unions? Bad. Despise them. Because they negotiate higher wages, better working conditions. Heck, the UAW, United Auto Workers, just negotiated a 30% raise from all 3 major car companies. Just the last one came to this morning for the General Motors. Big deal. This kind of affects me personally right now because I am operating as a teacher without a contract. We do not have a contract and they will not bargain with us. And so it's kind of a big deal that's affecting me. And I don't know, it will directly affect you more and more down the road. Why do you think I cannot do it at lunch? And so, this is how textile mills, just a few in 1810, we'll look at the massive growth here. Fast moving streams, but also more coal power. When these would unionize, they started moving down south because south was more anti-union. And 6, steam power. So we're going through all these steam power. Steam power, the steam engine, this would revolutionize power sources because now they could get away from the water. And it made sense, doesn't it? They moved to places where they're closer to the coal. That's the middle Atlantic states in the United States. Massive amounts of coal right here, just massive. That's why, for example, Pittsburgh would become the center for steel production in the United States going into the 20th century. Because coal. So here is the Union Iron Works. This is also, I believe that's in Scranton, another industrial town. And here is in a coal mine. Incredibly dangerous, incredibly difficult work. These are breaker boys. The coal would go down the chute and the boys would just stomp 16 hours straight, breaking the coal into smaller pieces. And if they fell in that, they would be mangled. And of course, immediately fired, right? Shockingly dangerous work. Children, young boys especially, they could beat them into submission, literally. And what does child labor do to wages? Drops them dramatically. And we'll talk more about child labor down the road. But James Watt, a Welshman, British, he invented the first workable steam engine. Thomas Newcomen actually invented the first workable steam engine as a pump, but it was inefficient. He made it efficient. Watt. And once Watt did this at the end of the 1790s, this dramatically increased production. You can see everything from transportation, railroads, you name it. Watt's steam engine would be the fuel of the Industrial Revolution. And once you have this constant energy source, innovation just exploded. Just absolutely exploded. And this is this is steam engine. This is at a museum in London. Here, basically, water, superheated. They tried wood, coal's much better. It would go into this piston right here. And this steam jacket had to be very precisely made, so they had to come up with new ways to make iron than especially steel. This would blow up. That's what made big steam engines so dangerous. But they'd shoot in a jet of steam that would push the piston up. They release the steam with a little jet of water so it cooled down rapidly. That would create a vacuum, bringing the piston down. More steam, pump up, down. Turn this wheel, pop. And just see the innovation. And earlier the country had this, the biggest advantage they had. Here's the first American patent for a steam engine, directly copying Watt's. And here's a steam-powered car, this little museum in Northern England. I just thought this was kind of funny, and this would be shockingly dangerous and hot and terrible to ride. But they're trying. Never really worked. They could never get one big enough, or the engine big enough, couldn't haul the fuel, etc. But you can see where you get the steam engine right here, that big long Part of the steam engine right here, this long cylinder had the water, superheated. There's the piston, turning the wheel. I like steam engines. I think they're really cool. And once you have that in the factory, now the belts are going to be all turning all these textile mills and everything else. This is the power of the Industrial Revolution. And jump right to here. So once you have this, innovation just started stacking on top of each other. Now, it's not that people weren't smart. It's just that if you don't have a power source. Now, as some of you know, there was an ancient Greek steam engine. This goes back about 400 BC. But it was more just like a toy. It was not used as a power source. So, people were obviously smart. But once you have a power source, Elias Howe would invent, what's this? Sewing machine. Once you have the power source to turn this crank, he invented a way we still have the same basic sewing machine process used today as Elias Howe back in 1843. But the power source would revolutionize clothing production, as you can imagine. It'd be a relatively short time before everyone started dressing the same. Civil War, they'd invent sizes. There was no sizes if everything was handmade. All of a sudden now, if you're mass producing uniforms for soldiers, you need sizes. And the standardization of products, it would drop the price because they could produce so much more efficiently. This is the Eli Whitney, not only known for muskets. Anybody know what this is? His first what? It looks like one, doesn't it? It is in the music box, though. It looks like one, though, doesn't it? It's cotton wool. It's the first cotton wool, yeah. And, but it does look like a music box, doesn't it? Everybody look at that. And, what's this? That's not Morse code. Telegraph, yeah, the telegraph. But Morse had to come up with a code because all it did is it had a little battery pack and it shot a little bit of electricity down a steel cord. And just a little bit of electricity. Still, the electricity would bleed away. Copper, as it turned out, being much better, but that wouldn't be really start to be used in mass amounts till the 1890s. Copper is always near silver, so any place had a silver mine, also they start doing copper. Gee, I wonder what city that would be. The 120,000 people who lived in Butte in 1919, which is so weird to think about today. But back to this. So all I would do is shoot a little electricity down the line, and people had this is preamplification with that little headphones, and they would listen, and they would hear just a little buzz. That's all they could hear. So Morse code, long buzz, short buzz, or dots, dashes. He had to come up with a code. Has anyone learned Morse code? A few people know a few words. I went through a little bit. I had a couple friends who did it, and it's hard. But the worst part is, the first Morse code, the electricity would bleed out of the line about 10 or 15 miles. So every 15 miles by 1860, you had to have a telegraph station. And there'd have to be a guy there 24 hours a day listening. They usually do a bunch of quick dashes in a row so you know a message is coming. Then you'd have to listen, transcribe it, and send it down the line. And that's where the game would come from. When I was located, it was called telegram, but later on it became called telephone. You know that game? You whisper something and it goes through. We will have to play that sometime. But here's why this innovation is so important. Yeah, sure, there was a reason for it. But think about the Industrial Revolution. Let's say you have a train. Train coming. Oh, you find out the bridge is out. Train coming, bridge is out. Train coming, bridge is out. Do you see why you might need Morse code? To alert the train is out. Or the bridge is out, and the train too. Or for that matter, this is another reason why Morse code and this is so important. Once you start buying and selling goods, you need instantaneous prices. You need to know the price of goods, the cost of goods immediately. But here's the biggie. This is the one you have to get down. Morse invention, the telegram, would allow for bigger companies. Bigger companies have a massive competitive advantage over smaller ones. Big always has a competitive advantage. Doesn't mean they always use it rightly, but they always have an advantage. So before the telegram, if you ran a company, you ran a factory, you had to be there day and night. With the telegram, you could centralize command in one spot, and then you didn't have to be an expert in that field. You just had to hire people who are experts who work in the factory, and you control things from, let's say, New York City. And that would revolutionize manufacturing. That allowed for bigger and bigger. And one more thing too, instantaneous news. Morse code, all of a sudden, you could know things you didn't know before. But here's a few more. What did John Deere invent? I knew someone was going to say tractor. Always say tractor. No, he wasn't alive yet to do a tractor. The plow. The steel tip plow right here. Eventually, this steel tip plow right here, you could plow significantly faster. It would cut through the hard soil of the Midwest. The dirt would scour off, meaning be easier to get the dirt off so you could have a nice clean cut. Would dramatically improve yields. Even as more important, with Cyrus McCormick's the mechanical reaper. What's a reaper? And if you see the reaper, you should be very worried. No, the reaper with a scythe would cut down wheat. And then what do you do when wheat is cut down? How do you get the seed off quickly? I mean, you could pick it off by hand, but you know what they would do? Yeah, they just beat it on something. That's really time consuming. Why do you think these small farms had to have a lot of kids? You need workers. Kids, good slave labor. Wait, this could do the work of 10 to 20 people. It would cut it here, then the wheat would go on this wheel, and it would kind of beat it as it moved. So it connected to this cam, which was pulled by the horse, and it would turn as you roll. This would do the work of 10 people, where the shaft would fall off and the corn, the seed, would go down and be saved. Do you know what a combine is? Combine is basically this multiplied by 20. This could do the work of 10, then 20, then hundreds of people. Is this good for farmers or bad? The answer is yes. It's cost. Farmers are always in what? You see a problem. If all of a sudden you can produce more per worker, what happens to the price? It goes down, yes. It seemed to be a boom. Mechanization would be the beginning of the end of small farmers. Oh, what is going to happen to all those kids that farm families used to have? Kick them out, migrants to the cities. Industrial revolution is going to do what to the size of families? Dramatically. Kids go from being little laborers to they're hungry and they eat and stuff. Yeah. Did you know that? So nothing fueled innovation like the railroad. The railroad would fuel not only telegraph and all these other new inventions in coal mining, iron, and steel would become mandatory because iron is much softer. Steel you can use less, become more efficient. Steel production after the Civil War will be fueled by railroads. Railroads are so shockingly expensive, they need a new type of business. Eventually, corporations would come. The first corporation would be the Bank of the United States, but railroads. And with the amount of money and financing necessary, railroads are going to revolutionize banking. Everything was wrapped around railroads. Railroads become so dominant, they will literally run our lives. And when railroads decided after the Civil War, you know, we don't like the fact that everybody just makes up their own time. We will dictate the times to the country. The whole United States just followed. Where do you think time zones come from? Railroads. That's the kind of power they had to make or break companies. So think about the engineering skill necessary to build tunnels. Couldn't just kind of have some yahoos with a pickaxe going into a hillside. And especially when it's much faster to tunnel from both sides. You want to meet, you don't want to go buy. Figure that one out myself. And this trestle's scary, isn't it? Look at that thing. But if it's wood, you limit, build it faster, but once again, you couldn't have any yahoo build that. So railroads would be key. So why America? Why would this American system, these interchangeable parts, this industrial world hit the United States? Britain had its own reasons. Why the United States? Part of the reason for Britain, I should add, is Britain is basically an island of coal. But why here? Well, first off, even though most people then, as today, are, oh, you know, I put iron shipbuilding because kind of show the Industrial Revolution. Most people are working class. There's a tiny upper class, but the United States had the largest middle, or it's what they call middling class. That means more people who buy goods. Now, the middle class is not the median. It's just these are people in between the upper class and the working class. They must work, but they can afford some of the trappings of an upper class life without going into a great amount of debt. The United States still has a very large middle class, not as big as it used to. We're much more working class now. But this is a good graph to show. There's this great French economist named Thomas Piketty, and was looking at the growth of the economy. He's really interesting economist. But this is the wealth in the top 1%. And look how much wealth was focused on top in Britain. The United States, even though the richest 1% had significant amount of wealth, even with the Industrial Revolution concentrating wealth, at least up until today, it never got much higher than 45%. And so that means there's more money to spread around to other people. That's the point of this. If the very wealthy, the richest 1% is making 70% of the wealth, that means everybody else has to share the 30%. And say it again.
Why did the UK and France crash in the same year?
A combination of a number of different things, a combination of World War I, but the big thing was the Great Depression. The Great Depression and the World War II, every country, at least for the next 40 years after World War II, they changed the way their economic system was around to try to get rid of monopolies and try to redistribute wealth to create a bigger middle class. And the same thing happened in the United States.
Just not as pronounced.
But yeah, not quite as pronounced. And that's gone away now in the United States. In the last 15 years, this ends in 2005, the last 15 years, the percentage of wealth in the top 1% has doubled. Yeah. So money just flows to the top, unlike no time in American history. And it's causing problems. But we have more people here. France and Britain, yeah, you go there, it's noticeable. There's not as many people with vast fortunes there as here. There's not that many with vast fortunes here. So next, there's a shortage of labor. There really was always this shortage, especially of skilled workers. For example, France had all these skilled workers, and they resisted being replaced by machines. But in the United States, there wasn't as much resistance to the machines because there weren't as many skilled laborers. And then by the time the skilled laborers started being replaced by machines around the Civil War, it was too late. Britain, they resisted. France, they resisted. That's why France, as wealthy as France was, it began the Industrial Revolution later than they probably think they should have. And this would greatly affect them going into the 20th century. Next, education. The United States had the most educated and literate population. An educated population gives you two things. If you're well educated and you're expected to ask questions and be curious and take your accumulated information and come up with your own point of view, you're more able to adapt to a changing economy, to adapt to changes. Education allows you to adapt more, technically. And it also teaches you to be good little factory workers. By the way, isn't that a good contradiction in education? We want you to be questioning, thinking people to learn as much as possible so you can think critically, and at the same time, we want you to be obedient workers. It's a dual mandate that sometimes conflicts with each other. But here's the biggie. Oh, not public education, I'll say this. And the United States eventually would have something close to universal education. And if we're talking about somebody you saw in your chapter 11 work, Horace Mann. And here's an abacus working on math. I thought that was a pretty amazing one. They had the big abacus and they would do the math together. Has anyone ever used an abacus? Besides just play with them? Yeah, I saw when I was in elementary school, we had to use those for math. You know, it's so weird. I kind of forgot, but I remember being pretty quick with it. And I remember learning how to use a slide rule. Boy, that was something. And I know what all of you are thinking right at this moment. Wow, are you ancient? I know. And all I had was a rock for a friend. But, like I said before, citizenship, the good thinking citizens and workers, it is kind of a dual mandate. And more, this is becoming all they talk about. And that I find a little bit scary. So here's an example of schoolwork in this. Okay, I just found this. I thought.
Illiterate.
I think for this one, you should be able to not change spelling.
Okay, now I don't know if somebody made this up. It seems made up, but of course the only word they spelled correctly was illiterate. I'm guessing that's made up, but it's still pretty good. All right. And thus, all of this will accumulate together into a brand new economic system called capitalism. Now, there have been market economies before. There's been a market economy that goes back to ancient Sumeria. We should all go back to ancient Sumeria. But Adam Smith would write a book in 1776 called, everybody calls it The Wealth of Nations. So just write The Wealth of Nations. But the entire title of the book is The Theory of Moral Sentiments and Inquiry to the Nature of the Causes of the Wealth of Nations. Titles of books back then were so long. The Wealth of Nations, the year he wrote it. What year was the Declaration of Independence written and the United States declared independence? The same year, 1776. There's Adam Smith right there. And I have my poster of Adam Smith right next to the disembodied head of a former student. Actually, just and Adam Smith, if you have a poster of Adam Smith, he must always face north. Always. So those of you who have an Adam Smith poster at home, which is, I guess, most of you, make sure he's facing north, right? He's a Scotsman. And what's economics? I told you the definition of economics before.
Spending money. Buying things.
Guess what will be on the quiz tomorrow? How they deal with scarce items. Did someone say that and I missed? How they deal with scarce items. That's the production, consumption, how they transfer wealth around to deal with scarce items. And a lot of people say he was the father of economics. He actually read he was not called an economist, and he was called a philosopher. And he read, there were the two very famous Arab philosophers from the 13th century that he used their ideas very, very liberally. And so he didn't invent the ideas, but put them together in a much more readable book. Wealth of Nations is really interesting. It's hard reading prose from 1776. You know, we have one whole page is one sentence. It's just odd. They didn't have the same grammatical rules. But what he talks about here in the book, he talked about this idealized free market. Now in free market, that is an area where people come and buy and sell goods. So someone has to produce, buy and sell goods. Usually market is like a one product. Like it could be any market of anything from the car market, the gas market, the pencil market, the paper market. the frozen concentrated orange juice market. And on that note, you're allowed to leave now. The bell has rung, you good little factory workers. Misery. Bye, see ya. You did really well on your what I do. How about this? Yeah. If you want to do it tomorrow, I'll give you a chance to get out.
So I did that same thing with this last week.
Okay, got it. Yeah. And you have 7 periods. You have 7 periods? You come in after it? Come in after it? I've made the other. Yeah. Yeah, just read it. Give me
Is it really hard?
Six.
Or could it be like, it's like a period. No.
Could I see how that impacts my grade? Because if it doesn't,
I get up to half of the
I just.
You want to do it? Just give you a chance to tomorrow, okay? Oh, I gotta have access.
Yeah. I also have no idea what I should do.
I gave you a couple.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna see what. Because I know you said the last one, you said led to the Constitution.
You don't have the Constitution. I think you missed a bunch of this. Yeah, for a quick overview.
Hey, this ain't math
Got
class.
nothing.
What
I got nothing.
This ain't math class. What is this?
It's not math, it's economics. Okay, this one, yeah. I go play. You just have to find the lecture.
You guys just left out.
Name 6.
Oh,
Yeah. Yep, I'm handing back right now. So, we're going to quick go over these and. William. William. I got. Aurora. Andre.
Is that an
82.
82?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, okay.
I make a point. Box. Hey. Hey. So wait, all of the I wrote about the Christians on
That's me.
Sorry, what? All I wrote about yeah. All right, everybody, I've not had a chance to type these in the grade book. Hopefully I can do it tomorrow. My study hall, I was reading about labor unions. I was reading about the UAW. Okay, let's quickly talk about these. I will give you, this is another chance on a few of these to try to get a few of the points back. Most people got A and B, and that's great. And a few people miss almost none on the multiple choice, and a few people miss a lot on the multiple choice. And that's part of the reason why I don't like multiple choice. You misread one part, you get a little bit confused. It's all or nothing. You got to do them. You have to be able to do multiple choice, but it can be really annoying. I will say that only one person in all my classes put down C for number 9. Nobody put down E for number 4, but somebody did put down E for 22.
Is that you?